Have you ever done everything right in a relationship and still been told it wasn't enough? Have you ever loved someone with everything you had, your time, your effort, your heart, and watched them pull away anyway? Or maybe you are on the other side. Maybe you have been loved, genuinely loved, and still felt empty, still felt unseen, still felt alone. If that resonates with you, you are not broken. You are not difficult. You are not unlovable. You simply speak a different language. And today, we are going to talk about one of the most important ideas in the history of human relationships. A concept so simple, so profound, that once you understand it, you will never see love the same way again. We are talking about Gary Chapman's theory of the 5 love languages and the deeper, often unspoken truth behind it. Why love feels unreceived, even when it is being given. Before we dive in, let us talk about the man himself. Dr. Gary Chapman is not a celebrity psychologist with a viral moment and a best-selling brand. He is something far more rare. He is a man who spent decades, literally decades, sitting across from couples in crisis, couples on the edge of divorce, couples who had stopped speaking, couples who still loved each other, but could not figure out why they kept hurting each other. Gary Chapman is a marriage counselor, an author, and a pastor based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He earned his doctorate in adult education, and for over 35 years, he listened. He listened to thousands of stories, thousands of arguments, thousands of moments where someone said, "I give, and it never feels like enough." And then one day, he noticed something, a pattern. Hidden inside all those different stories, all those different couples, all those different complaints, was the same fundamental problem. They were not failing to love each other. They were failing to speak to each other, not in words, but in the language of love. In 1992, Gary Chapman published a book called The 5 Love Languages. It went on to sell over 20 million copies worldwide. It has been translated into 50 languages. It has sat on bestseller lists for decades. Why? Because it told the truth about something we all feel, but almost never have the words to explain. Here is the central insight of Gary Chapman's work. And I want you to really hear this. Love is not a universal feeling that everyone receives the same way. Say that again to yourself. Love is not a universal feeling that everyone receives the same way. Think about that. We grow up assuming that love is obvious, that if you love someone enough, they will feel it, that good intentions translate into felt affection, but they do not. Not always. Not even most of the time. Chapman uses a beautiful metaphor. He says every person has what he calls an emotional love tank. Imagine a fuel gauge inside your chest. When your love tank is full, you feel secure, confident, valued. You have the emotional resources to give, to grow, to thrive. But when your love tank is empty, that is when you feel lonely, even in a relationship. That is when you feel invisible, even when someone is right there. That is when you feel like love is not real, or that you do not deserve it, or that something is fundamentally wrong with you. And here is the tragedy Chapman spent his career uncovering. Most of the time, your love tank is not empty because no one loves you. It is empty because no one is speaking your language. The first love language is words of affirmation. For people who speak this language, words are not just sounds, they are oxygen. A simple "I'm proud of you" can carry them through a hard week. A handwritten note left on the counter can mean more than an expensive gift. Hearing "I love you," not assumed, but actually said, fills their tank in a way nothing else can. On the flip side, Criticism cuts them deeper than you know. Sarcasm is not funny to them. An offhand, cruel comment does not just sting, it lingers. Words of affirmation include compliments, encouragement, expressions of appreciation, and humble requests rather than demands. And most importantly, the three words every human being needs to hear. I love you, not assumed, not implied, said. If your partner speaks this language and you are someone who thinks, they know I love them, I do not need to say it. Hear this. They do not know, not the way they need to know. Tell them, out loud, often. The second love language is quality time. And I want to be very specific here because this one is widely misunderstood. Quality time does not mean being in the same room. It does not mean watching television together while both of you scroll your phones. It does not mean sitting at the same dinner table in silence. Quality time means focused, undivided attention. It means putting down the phone, making eye contact, being present, not just physically, but emotionally. For people who speak this language, the greatest gift you can give them is not your money, not your effort. It is your attention, your full, genuine, uninterrupted attention. Chapman describes something called quality conversation, a dialogue where both people share their thoughts, their feelings, their desires, in an environment of complete acceptance, not fixing, not advising, not half listening, really listening to understand. And he also talks about quality activities, doing things together, whatever those things are, with the focus being on togetherness. If your partner keeps saying, "We never spend time together," even though you live in the same house, they probably speak this language. And what they are really saying is, I need you here, not just near me, here. The third love language is receiving gifts. And before anyone misunderstands this, let me explain what it really means. Chapman is not talking about materialism. He is not talking about people who want expensive things. He is talking about something much deeper. For people who speak this language, a gift is a symbol. It says, I thought of you. It says, you crossed my mind when you were not here. It says, you matter enough for me to mark the moment. The gift does not have to be expensive. It could be a wildflower picked on the way home, a coffee made exactly the way they like it, a book you saw and thought they would love this. What matters is the thoughtfulness behind it, the visible, tangible proof that they were on your mind. Chapman also makes a point that many people miss. Your presence can be a gift. Showing up, physically showing up, for the moments that matter to them, that is a gift, possibly the greatest one. If you have ever been in a relationship where your partner gets genuinely hurt when you forget an occasion, not because they are demanding, but because to them, forgetting that day means you forgot me, they are probably speaking this language. The fourth love language is acts of service. For these people, love is a verb, not a feeling, not a declaration, an action. Chapman quotes a simple but powerful phrase, actions speak louder than words. For someone whose primary love language is acts of service, they live by this completely. When you do the dishes without being asked, when you fill up their car before they have to think about it, when you take something off their plate on a day when they are overwhelmed, that is how they feel loved. Notice I said, without being asked. That part matters. Doing something kind after being nagged to do it is not an act of service in the emotional sense. It might even feel like resentment wrapped in compliance. True acts of service are proactive. They say, I see what you need, and I am going to meet it, not because you asked, but because I love you. Chapman warns that for people who speak this language, laziness, broken commitments, and making more work for them are deeply destructive. To them, those things do not just say, "I am tired." They say, "I do not care." But when you serve, when you show up and do, they feel it in a way that words could never touch. The fifth love language is physical touch. And this is not just about physical intimacy in a romantic sense. It is about human connection through the body. A hand on the shoulder in a hard moment. A hug that lasts a little longer than it needs to. Sitting close. A squeeze of the hand while watching a film. These things communicate love in a way that bypasses language entirely. Chapman points out that from the moment we are born, touch is how we first understand that we are safe, that we are loved, that we belong. A baby held by its mother does not speak. It does not understand words, but it feels the warmth, the closeness, the security. For adults who speak this language, that primal need never fully goes away. Physical presence, closeness, is their love. And physical withdrawal, being untouched, unreached for, unchosen, is their deepest loneliness. Chapman says crises and illness often make this even more clear. Think about the instinct to reach for someone's hand in a moment of grief or fear. For people who speak this language, that instinct is not just instinct, it is everything. Now, we come to the heart of it. Why does love feel unreceived? Here is what Gary Chapman discovered after all those years, all those sessions, all those stories. Most people love others the way they themselves want to be loved. Read that again. Most people love others the way they themselves want to be loved. If your love language is words of affirmation, you naturally compliment the people you love. You tell them how you feel. You write them notes, because that is what would fill your tank, and so you assume it fills theirs. If your love language is acts of service, you cook, you clean, you fix, you show up and do, because that is what love means to you. But if your partner's language is quality time, all the dishes in the world will not fill their tank. If your partner's language is words of affirmation, every gift you give will eventually feel hollow if you never just say the words they need to hear. This is what Chapman calls the love tank problem. Two people, both loving each other, both trying, both giving, and both feeling empty, because they are speaking two completely different languages, and neither one realizes it. Imagine this: you move to a foreign country, you do not speak the language, you try to connect, to communicate, to be kind, but your words mean nothing. People do not understand you. You do not understand them. Eventually, you might stop trying. You might conclude, they do not want to connect with me. Or worse, I am not worth connecting with. That is exactly what happens in relationships where love languages are mismatched, and no one knows why. Chapman says the most painful relationships are not the ones with no love. They are the ones where both people are full of love, but neither feels it, because it is never landing. The love is real, the effort is real, but the translation is missing. Let me be honest with you for a moment. The cost of mismatched love languages, when unrecognized, when unaddressed, is enormous. It shows up as resentment. I do everything for this person, and they do not even care. It shows up as withdrawal. I have tried telling them how I feel 100 times. They just do not listen. It shows up as disconnection. We live together. We are polite, but we do not really know each other anymore. It shows up in therapists' offices, in divorce lawyers' offices, in the silence of a house where two people are no longer trying to reach each other. Chapman saw this over and over. And what broke his heart, what still breaks his heart, is that so many of those relationships did not have to end. They ended not because the love was gone. They ended because the people involved did not have the language, the framework, to understand what the other person needed. That is what the 5 love languages is really about. Not a quiz, not a personality type, not a fun fact to share at dinner. It is a lifeline, a map back to each other. So how do you discover your love language? Chapman gives us several ways to think about this. First, ask yourself, what do I most often request from the people I love? Do you ask them to spend time with you? Do you ask them to help you with things? Do you ask for physical affection? Do you want them to tell you that you are doing well? What you ask for most often points toward your primary language. Second, ask yourself, what hurts most when it is withheld? If someone stops saying kind things to you, does that devastate you in a particular way? If someone is physically distant, does that trigger a deep loneliness? If someone forgets an important occasion, does it feel personal in a way others do not understand? The pain often marks the place where the language lives. Third, ask yourself, what do I do naturally when I love someone? Because as we talked about, we tend to give love in the language we most want to receive. Pay attention to your natural impulses. They are telling you something. Chapman's book includes a simple, powerful assessment that walks you through exactly this. Thousands of people have taken it and said the same thing. I wish I had known this 10 years ago. You can find it today. It will not take long, but what it gives you, the clarity, the self-awareness, the capacity to communicate, that lasts a lifetime. Now, this is the part where it gets exciting. Because once you know your language, and once you know the language of the person you love, you have something powerful. You no longer have to guess. You no longer have to wonder why your efforts are not landing. You no longer have to feel like you are failing at something that should come naturally. You have a map. And Chapman is very clear about something important here. He says this is not about feeling like loving someone in their language. It is about choosing to. Real love, Chapman says, is not primarily a feeling. It is a decision, a commitment. The best thing I can do for you is love you in the way you actually need to be loved. Not the way I assume, not the way I hope is enough, but the way that actually fills you up. That decision, that single, humble, powerful decision, changes everything. It has changed marriages, it has healed estrangements, it has saved families. If your love language is acts of service, but your partner needs words of affirmation, you do not get to say, I fixed your car. What more do you want? You learn to say the words, even if it feels awkward, even if it does not come naturally, you say them anyway because you love that person. If your love language is quality time, but your partner needs physical touch, you reach out, you initiate the closeness, you make it a habit, even when you would be fine without it. This is what it means to love someone. Not to love them on your terms, but to love them on theirs. And here is the miracle Chapman witnessed over and over again. When you start speaking your partner's love language, when their emotional tank begins to fill, they naturally, organically, start filling yours. Not because you demanded it, not because you negotiated it, because love, real love, tends to inspire love. I want to speak directly to you now. Maybe you are in a relationship that feels stuck, a relationship where you love your partner, but something has gone quiet. Something feels like it is missing, even though you cannot quite name it. Maybe you are not in a relationship right now, but you are carrying the weight of ones that did not work. You gave everything. You tried everything. and it still fell apart. And part of you has wondered, what is wrong with me? Why is this so hard? I want to tell you something. There is nothing wrong with you. You were not lacking in love. You were lacking a language. And languages can be learned. Gary Chapman's message is ultimately not about relationships ending. It is about relationships beginning again, beginning better, beginning with the kind of intentionality and clarity that so few of us were ever taught to bring to love. It is about looking at the person in front of you, or the person you hope will stand in front of you one day, and saying, I want to love you the way you need to be loved. Not the way I assume, not the way I hope is enough, but the way that actually fills you up. That decision, that single, humble, powerful decision, changes everything. Gary Chapman gave us a gift, not just a theory, not just a book. He gave us a lens, a way of seeing each other more clearly, more generously, more truly. Because here is what it all comes back to. Love is not enough on its own. That might sound surprising, but it is true. Love plus understanding is enough. Love plus communication is enough. Love plus the willingness to learn someone's language. That is what builds something lasting. So here is your challenge. This week, find out your love language. Find out the love language of someone you love. Have that conversation, even if it feels awkward, even if it feels vulnerable, especially then. Ask them, how do you feel most loved? What fills you up? What makes you feel seen? And then listen, really listen, not to respond, not to defend, just to understand. Because the moment you start understanding, the moment you start speaking someone's language, something shifts. The distance closes, the walls come down, the love that was always there finally starts landing. And that is why Gary Chapman's message matters. Not just in marriages, not just in romance, but in every relationship that matters to you, with your parents, with your children, with your closest friends. Love is the most powerful force in the human experience. Do not waste it speaking the wrong language. Learn the language, fill the tank, change the relationship, change your life.